Think buying a $120,000 apartment on a mortgage is a smart move. Think again. Most people look at that price tag and assume that's all they're paying. It's not. That perfect apartment can quietly cost you $220,000 or more over 20 to 30 years once you include interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. And the scary part, most people never calculate it. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to show the truth that almost nobody talks about. A mortgage isn't just a monthly payment. It's a long-term obligation that shapes your life, your choices, and your freedom in ways you might not notice until it's too late. By the end of this video, you'll understand why an apartment can either be your biggest wealth-building move or your slowest, most expensive trap. So let's start with the first question. Do you really own that apartment, or are you just paying for the illusion of ownership? When most people buy an apartment, they feel like they've made it. They picture themselves moving in, decorating, having their own space, and finally calling something theirs. But let's pause for a second. What do you really own? Technically, the bank owns most of it until you finish paying off the mortgage. Every payment you make is partly yours, partly theirs. And here's the sneaky part. The majority goes to interest in the early years. That means for the first few years, you're mostly paying the bank, not building equity. Let's take a realistic example. You find a $120,000 apartment. You scrape together $24,000 for a 20% down payment. Years of saving for most people. You take a 20-year mortgage at 7% interest, which is about $780 per month in principal and interest. Sounds manageable, right? But over 20 years, the interest alone adds up to nearly $187,000. Add your down payment, and you're looking at $211,000 total for an apartment that cost $120,000. And that's before property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Costs most people forget. A leaky roof, a broken boiler, or just regular upkeep can add hundreds per month, quietly eating your budget. Here's what most people don't see: the opportunity cost. That $24,000 down payment could have been invested elsewhere, in stocks, ETFs, or even a small side business, where it could grow instead of being locked in a single property. Your monthly $780, that's cash flow you could use to build assets that generate income, not just pay for a roof over your head. And psychologically, it's even trickier. Once you sign that mortgage, your brain treats the apartment as yours, even though most of the value is technically the bank's. You feel anchored, you feel like an adult, you feel safe. And because of that feeling, you stop thinking critically about money. You delay investing elsewhere. You hesitate to take career risks. You stop asking, is my money really working for me? That's why I call this mortgage slavery. It's not evil. It's invisible. It's the slow shift from financial freedom to financial obligation. You're trading years of your future income for a present sense of security. And that sense of security feels good until reality hits. Now imagine if you could see this early. The total cost, the interest, the opportunity lost. You'd realize the apartment isn't just a home, it's a decades-long financial contract. And understanding that changes everything. You start making smarter decisions, maybe paying extra toward the principal, maybe delaying the purchase, maybe renting a few years while building investments that work for you. Most people stop at the monthly mortgage payment. They see $780 a month and think, I can handle that. But that number is just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine it like an iceberg in a frozen sea. What you see is small, but below the surface, most of the cost is hidden. First, property tax, $100, $200 a month, depending on your city. Then insurance, $50, $100 a month. Maintenance, a leaky pipe or a new water heater can cost hundreds or even thousands in a single year. Suddenly, that manageable $780 monthly payment jumps to $1,100, $1,200, and that's before utilities, HOA fees, or unexpected repairs. Here's the part most people don't think about: the opportunity cost. That $24,000 down payment, if invested in a diversified stock portfolio with just a 7% annual return, after 20 years, it could grow to over $90,000. Your mortgage payment, if invested instead of paid toward interest, it could generate thousands more in wealth over time. Think about it. You could live in a slightly smaller apartment or rent a place, invest the difference, and in 20 years, your financial freedom could be much bigger than owning the apartment outright. And here's the sneaky psychological trick. Once the mortgage is signed, your brain treats the apartment as yours. You feel accomplished, responsible, safe. But that feeling creates financial inertia. Suddenly, you hesitate to switch jobs, start a side hustle, or take calculated risks. You start thinking, I have to protect this home at all costs. I've seen this happen in real life. Friends who bought starter apartments early in their career often tell me 10 years later, I feel trapped, I can't move, I can't invest as much, I can't take risks. And it's not because they made a bad choice. It's because the hidden costs and opportunity costs silently took over. That's why understanding the full picture, all costs, all obligations, all opportunity costs, is crucial. Without it, you can work for decades thinking you're building wealth, while most of your money quietly flows into interest, taxes, and maintenance. Later in this video, I'll show a side-by-side comparison. Buying an apartment versus renting and investing the difference. The results are shocking, and they completely change how you think about homeownership. Most people assume buying an apartment is always the smarter move. You hear, owning is building wealth, renting is throwing money away. And that's the story we've all been told. But let's break it down with reality. The numbers, the psychology, and the opportunity cost. Imagine a $120,000 apartment. You put $24,000 down, and your monthly mortgage, plus taxes, insurance, and maintenance, comes to about $1,030 per month. Over 20 years, including interest, property tax, insurance, and upkeep, you will have spent roughly $285,000, more than double the original price. Now, imagine renting a similar apartment for $600 per month and investing the difference. That's about $430 per month in a diversified portfolio with a modest 7% annual return. After 20 years, that investment could grow to roughly $200,000, $250,000. And the best part? You still have flexibility. You can move cities, start a side business, take career risks, or even buy a home later, all without being locked into decades of payments. Here's what people miss. Buying feels like security, but it can also be a trap. The apartment is tangible, it's yours, but most of your payments go straight to the bank and interest in the early years. You're building equity, but it's slow, and for decades, your cash is tied up. Meanwhile, the investments you could have made elsewhere keep growing every month, compounding quietly in the background. And there's the psychological side. Owning a home makes you feel responsible, accomplished, and safe. But it also creates financial inertia. Suddenly, moving for a better job seems risky. Starting a side hustle seems harder. Taking chances on investments feels dangerous because your money is locked in walls and a roof. You've traded freedom for the illusion of stability. Here's a key insight. Wealth is not just about what you own. It's about what your money does for you. An apartment might feel like an asset, but it's not fully liquid. It doesn't generate income independently. Investments, on the other hand, grow and compound, giving you both money and flexibility. Now, I'm not saying don't buy an apartment ever. Sometimes it makes sense, but you need to understand the full picture. The total cost, the interest, the taxes, the maintenance, and most importantly, the opportunity cost. Because what you don't invest today is money that could have been working for your freedom tomorrow. So here's the question to ask yourself. Is your apartment a wealth-building tool, or is it a long-term obligation disguised as security? Once you see the numbers and the psychology clearly, your answer changes everything. Let's be honest. Buying a home doesn't just cost money. It costs freedom and flexibility. Most people don't realize how much their decisions are influenced by the mortgage long before they even notice it. Once you're tied to a monthly payment for 20 years, everything changes. Want to switch jobs? Harder. You need a stable income to cover the mortgage. Want to start a side business? Riskier. You can't afford to miss a paycheck. Want to move to a cheaper or better city? Forget it. Your equity is stuck. Your apartment is illiquid. Even small choices become constrained. That $50 extra for a weekend trip suddenly feels irresponsible. That extra $100 for a course to improve skills feels risky. You're constantly trading personal growth and opportunity for monthly security. And most people don't even see it. They feel comfortable, responsible, accomplished, but that comfort is a slow-moving cage. Let's talk lifestyle inflation. Owning a home makes us want to upgrade everything. A slightly nicer furniture set, more expensive appliances, little renovations here and there. All earned, all reasonable. But each upgrade increases your monthly baseline. Your normal lifestyle becomes more expensive, and your freedom shrinks further. Here's a real-life example. Imagine you just bought your apartment and get a small raise. Your first instinct, upgrade the furniture, get a nicer couch, maybe a faster internet plan. That $50, $100 extra feels like progress. But in reality, it locks you deeper into obligations because now your budget depends on that higher income to maintain your lifestyle. That's lifestyle inflation in action. Silent, automatic, and most people fall for it. The psychological effect is subtle but powerful. You feel like you're winning, but every win ties you down a little more. Your apartment feels like security, but it's actually a decision anchor, shaping how you spend, work, and take risks for decades. This is why understanding the real cost of ownership isn't just numbers, it's mindset. Freedom isn't just financial, it's the ability to choose without fear. Once your money is locked in walls, your options shrink, and your stress subtly increases. By seeing this clearly, you start asking the right questions. Am I upgrading my lifestyle or my freedom? Am I investing in assets that work for me, or just paying for obligations that limit me? Once you grasp the psychological trap of mortgages and lifestyle inflation, the way you view homeownership, career, and investments completely changes. Here's something most people don't realize. Buying a home isn't just a 20-year financial commitment. It's a lifelong influence on your choices, career, and freedom. Think about your first mortgage payment. It feels manageable. $780 a month. Seems easy, right? But over time, it quietly shapes your behavior. Want to switch to a better job with higher potential, but less stability? Suddenly risky. Want to start a side business or take a sabbatical? Harder. Want to move to a new city for an opportunity? Expensive and stressful. Even small lifestyle upgrades make a difference. A slightly nicer couch, a better kitchen appliance, or extra subscriptions, they all raise your monthly baseline. Slowly, what once felt comfortable becomes a trap. You're earning more, but your freedom doesn't increase at the same pace. Now, let's layer in the opportunity cost. Every dollar tied up in your apartment could have been invested elsewhere. Stocks, index funds, or other assets that compound independently of your work. That $430 difference between renting and paying a full mortgage every month? Over 20 years, it can grow to hundreds of thousands while giving you mobility and flexibility along the way. Here's the psychological twist. Your apartment feels like freedom, but it's also an anchor. It changes how you think, act, and take risks. You start making decisions to protect the asset rather than to grow your wealth. And here's the key insight. Freedom isn't about ownership alone. It's about control over your money and your time. The apartment might be yours, but most of your payments flow to interest, taxes, and maintenance. Meanwhile, renting and investing the difference builds liquid assets, optionality, and real long-term power. By understanding this, you start asking the right questions. Am I buying comfort or building options? Am I tied to an asset, or is my money working for me? This is where most people get stuck. They focus on owning a home as the ultimate milestone, without seeing the invisible chains it creates. Recognizing the long-term consequences changes the game. It shifts the focus from immediate gratification and perceived security to real financial strategy and freedom. Owning a home is often sold to us as the ultimate achievement, the milestone that proves we've made it. But here's the reality. Homeownership carries hidden emotional and social costs that far outweigh what people usually consider. It's not just the money. Every mortgage payment, tax bill, repair, and maintenance task quietly shapes your decisions, priorities, and mindset. Want to switch jobs for better growth? Suddenly risky. Want to switch jobs for better growth? Suddenly risky. Want to move somewhere cheaper or explore new opportunities? Constrained. Your apartment is no longer just an asset. It's a set of invisible chains. Then there's social pressure. Friends, family, and society celebrate homeownership like it's the ultimate sign of success. You bought your place? Congrats. That pressure can make people buy before they're financially ready, stretch budgets, or commit to payments that strain their life. Suddenly, the apartment isn't just a home. It's a status symbol, and your choices are influenced as much by perception as by practicality. People invest in upgrades, decorate meticulously, create memories, and that emotional tie makes selling, moving, or even considering alternatives feel stressful or wrong. That attachment locks people deeper into their mortgage, limiting freedom without them even realizing it. The harsh truth? Mortgages aren't just financial commitments. They are psychological and social anchors. They influence where you work, how you spend, what risks you take, and even how free you feel in life. But here's the insight that changes everything. Awareness creates power. Once you recognize these invisible chains, you can make conscious choices. You can weigh your desire for ownership against your need for freedom, flexibility, and financial growth. You can decide, am I buying comfort, status, or real control over my life? And remember, real wealth isn't tied up in walls. True financial freedom comes from liquid assets, investments, and systems that work for you. Owning a home can be part of your plan, but it should never be the anchor that limits your options or traps your future. So, the final takeaway: don't let society, emotions, or the comfort of owning blind you. Step back, calculate the real costs, financial, emotional, and social, and make choices that build freedom, optionality, and long-term security. Because a home can give you shelter, but it shouldn't dictate your life. True security comes from control over your money, your time, and your decisions. And that is the real key to escaping mortgage slavery.